Substance use disorder affects nearly 50% of the families in the United States. And dealing with it in your own family can be heartbreaking, and it can easily end in disaster if it isn't taken care of, but it often feels like it's out of everybody's control. I can tell you from experience that my mother-in-law has a substance use disorder. I saw how it affected the relationship with her and my wife, and how it created a lot of resentment in the relationship. And ultimately, her substance use disorder cost her her life. Her death angered my wife because she felt as though she had did it to herself. But she was also mad at herself because she felt as though she didn't try hard enough to get her mom help. And at the time, my wife and I had no understanding of what substance use disorder actually was. And my goal for this video is to show you how serious substance use disorder is and why it's important for us to change or mindset and to prevent similar things from happening in more families. No family should have to go through what my wife and her mom did. And please keep in mind that the topics in this video are serious, and I am by no means trying to throw anyone under the bus. They are simply used to help better understand the impact of substance use disorder and the importance of getting it treated. If you aren't aware, this is the second video in a 4-part series. If you haven't watched the first video, I highly suggest you do it. I will link to it in the description below, and there will also be a card at the top right hand corner of this video that links to it. Also, there is timestamps below if you want to jump ahead in the video, but as I said in the first video, I highly suggest you watch the whole thing in its entirety. Before we get into it though, I want to introduce myself if you're new here. My name is Randall from Coffee Pot Dad. And Coffee Pot Dad is for parents who are seeking the best life for their family, with informative YouTube videos that help answer parenting questions and offers tips so we can all grow as parents and have a happier family. Before we get into the main part of the video, I want to tell you a story about a mother, her daughter, and a substance use disorder. There was once a girl and her mom was almost perfect. They would play Barbies, go for a walk in the woods, or go to the creek, pick berries, catch lightning bugs, and so much more. Her mom made her childhood almost perfect. She couldn't have asked for a better mom. Then when the girl was around 12 or 13, she noticed a change in her mom. Something was different, but she didn't know what it was. Her mom's speech would sometimes be slurred. She would stumble around and basically pass out wherever she was sitting. She eventually realized her mom had a substance use disorder, and she would use muscle relaxers, anxiety medicine, and occasionally alcohol. When she was 14, she was playing video games with her best friend, and her mom was sitting on the couch by them in one of her normal messed up states, or so she thought. Then they realized it was something more when she would hardly respond to them, and she couldn't even tell them who they were. Her friend, who was actually 12 at the time, knew exactly what was going on because he seen the same thing from his mom. He knew she was overdosing on her medication. He knew to keep her awake because he feared that if she did go to sleep, she would die. The daughter called her dad at work and let him know what was going on, but his job was nearly an hour away, and they spent that hour trying to keep her awake by slapping her legs, spritzing her with water, and making noises. When her dad finally got home, they brought her to the hospital where they pumped her stomach and estimated that she had taken 20 somas. But then when she recovered and got out, the same day she went home, she started popping the pills again. And that was the first of 3 times that she saw her mom overdose to the near total incomprehensiveness. And I will get to the other 2 soon. There was many other instances over the next few years where her mom's speech would be slurred. She would fall, knock stuff over, would try to eat and spill her food, and would fall asleep washing dishes, and once even stuck a stick of butter in the toaster. But for a long time, there was never any more moments like that first one. And at the age of 22, her daughter had her first kid. And not long after, her and her son and her at the time boyfriend were living with her mom, and she'd keep the baby when they went to work. One night when they had gotten home from work, the daughter found that her mom had gotten messed up, falling asleep at the kitchen sink while she was washing dishes, and her son was in his high chair, screaming his head off and not buckled in, and he was only a year old at the time. The daughter thought that her mom would never get messed up with her own infant grandson in her care, and she was angry and didn't trust her to keep him for a few years. Fast forward 6 years, her mom seemed to be doing better. She was able to keep her grandson many times without incident. There was still times she would get messed up, but it was never as bad as that first time. At least not as far as her daughter had known about. Then on a couple days before her grandson's 7th birthday, she was keeping him and her daughter called to talk. But he's the one that answered the phone. And when her daughter asked what his Mimi was, he said she was on the floor. And the daughter asked to talk to her mom, and he said that she would hardly talk. But he finally did give her the phone, and the daughter started talking to her. She realized that she was severely messed up again. The daughter and her husband rushed over to her house and found that she was still lying on the floor, barely able to string 2 words together. The husband took her son to the car, and the daughter raged at her mom and recorded the entire thing because she wanted her mom to see just how she was. Her daughter told her to forget about going to her grandson's birthday party, that they didn't need her there. She was so messed up that she couldn't even respond. She just looked at her with empty eyes. The saddest part is that she and her husband had to tell her son that his Mimi was just sick because they don't want to tell him the truth. After that, her and her mom didn't talk for several months, and it wasn't the first nor the last time that they didn't talk for a while. Her mom's substance use disorder caused a huge rift in their relationship. The first 13 years was amazing, but then came a vicious, never-ending cycle. Her mom would get messed up, and she would get mad at her mom for it. Then her mom would get mad at her because she was mad and start blaming her problems on her daughter and put her on guilt trip. Anytime she would try to bring up the problem to her mom, she would act like a narcissist and blame her problems on everyone but herself and come up with some way to justify her behavior. Sometimes she would try to blow it off, and when her daughter tried to show her the video she took of her messed up on the floor, she always said, "I don't want to see that." Her daughter built up a lot of resentment toward her mom because of her problem and how she treated her and how she completely changed as a mom. She built her up for the first 13 years, then spent the next 17 years tearing her apart piece by piece. Her daughter lost her dad when she was 22, just 3 months after her son was born. Then she had 2 miscarriages, one in 2018 and one in 2019. Yet she still credits this as the single most painful event in her life, if you look at it as one 17-year-long event. Her mom died on May 22nd, 2001, just 2 days after her daughter's 30th birthday, and less than a month before her grandson's 8th birthday. Little did she or anyone else know that her actions before his 7th birthday meant that she would never see her baby boy turn another year older. Her death came as a shock because it was so sudden, and it hurt her daughter because even with all of their problems, she still loved her mom. And her daughter could easily say she brought it on herself, and she did, and hold nothing but hatred toward her mom because of how she treated her for the last 17 years. But something happened shortly before her mom died that gave her daughter and her son-in-law a new perspective. This is the story of my wife and her mom. I won't lie, I was just as critical toward her mom's substance use disorder as she was, if not more so, but then my eyes were open. May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I had a video planned for that. In my research, I was shocked to find out that substance use disorder is actually a mental illness, and usually it is brought on due to other mental illnesses. And her mom did suffer from anxiety and depression as well as other things. We knew her mom had a tough life. She was raped, robbed, beaten, and all at different times. She lost her mom, her husband, and her brothers over the years. And just a couple weeks before she died, she lost one of her best friends. And all of these events took a toll on her and was likely the reason she had some of her problems. Yet we still never let that excuse her substance use disorder. We know better now, and we know that we were wrong. And their story should speak for itself. A substance use disorder can easily tear a family apart in several different ways. In this instance, it caused a 17-year-long rift in a mother and daughter's once amazing relationship, and then her mom died, which was likely due to an overdose, and they were never able to repair the relationship before that happened. And this is just one family story. There's families torn apart every day due to substance use disorder. Some families have similar stories, some darker, some not nearly as bad, but they're all equally important. Now that the story is out of the way, it's time to take a deep dive into how substance use disorder can affect your family. Living with or loving someone with a substance use disorder can be a roller coaster of emotions. Just looking at the relationship between my wife and her mom is a great example. They could go a while with no problems at all, then out of nowhere her mom would start an argument over the tiniest of things, and sometimes something that happened a long time ago. And sometimes these arguments meant they wouldn't talk for days, weeks, or months at a time. She, like many others with a substance use disorder, can have unpredictable behaviors, and it could cause the family and friends to walk on eggshells around them. My wife, for example, had to learn to avoid some topics of conversations to prevent fights with her mom, but she would sometimes bring them up. But when she did, my wife would try to avoid these conversations, but her mom would push to the point that she ended up getting mad at my wife because she wouldn't take the bait. It was a lose-lose situation for her. Eventually, family and friends, and especially children, would become more reserved around those that have a substance use disorder in hopes of keeping the peace and hopefully avoid physical or emotional abuse. Let's not forget there's also a lot of denial. No one wants to admit that their spouse, their parent, their kid, their friend are suffering from a substance use disorder, and if something were to happen and the one suffering from this substance use disorder was to go to jail or hurt someone, there's a lot of pain associated with that. Then they are posed with the question, do you defend them or admit that they were wrong and have a problem? And lastly, although there can be many more emotions involved, is the loss of trust. Someone's dependency on the substance can be so strong that sometimes they can inadvertently break promises, steal, and a whole lot more. And they will know their actions are wrong but feel like they have no control over them. Truthfully, this one might be cheating a little because the 7 other categories I'm covering can all and will affect children. But there are some very important ways in which children can be affected by living with a parent or someone who has a substance use disorder that I think is important for everyone to know. It is estimated that more than 8 million children younger than the age of 18 live with at least one adult who has a substance use disorder, and most are younger than the age of 5. Living in a home with a parent suffering from a substance use disorder can cause the family to become dysfunctional, and over time, as a result, the children can easily develop low self-esteem among many other problems, including guilt. Much like divorce, kids can easily believe that they are to blame. Perhaps they could have behaved better or did better in school or never been born. The next is anxiety and fear. If the home is unstable, the kid can easily fear the next fight or argument and worry about the health of the one suffering from the substance use disorder. Then there's embarrassment. Chances are, if the kid knows things are unstable at home, then they are likely to be embarrassed by it, and they don't want their classmates to find out and therefore never have friends over. And then that leads into lack of friends. If mistrust and the embarrassment of home life is too bad, then the children might avoid close relationships altogether and not make any friends. Then of course there's anger. The kids can easily develop anger problems. They might be angry at the parent who has a substance use disorder or the other parent because they feel like they are not doing enough to help. Then there's the possibility they could be angry at themselves if they feel as though they're to blame for their parents' problems. Then of course there's depression, because living in a dysfunctional home can be overwhelming for a kid, and they could easily feel lonely or helpless, and that could make them spiral into depression. Then it can really be bad and they can develop their own substance use disorder. And although many hate the environment they grow up in, they could inadvertently develop their own substance use disorder. And as stated in the first video of the series, a parent having a substance use disorder is believed to be one of the leading causes of someone developing one themselves. Of course, these 7 are only the tip of the iceberg. There are so many other ways that kids can be affected. Drugs are expensive, and over time that expense will add up due to increased usage and dependency. And here's an average cost of some substances to give you an idea of how much it can cost to maintain these habits. Let's say cigarettes is $7.75 per pack, and they smoke 5 packs per week. That's $38.75 a week and $2,015 a year. Percocet is likely over $11,000 per year. Cocaine can cost over $150,000 per year. Crack cocaine over $80,000 per year. Heroin over $90,000 per year, and meth over $30,000 per year. And keep in mind that some people suffer from multiple substances that they're addicted to. And I will leave a link in the description to the source that I found this at if you want to check out the cost for more of them. Eventually, in many cases, substance use disorders will affect finances and more than just the original cost of the substance. First being is medical expenses, and another being the loss of job due to failed drug tests, showing up to work high or drunk, decreased in job performance, or not showing up to work at all. But I won't be sure to come back for the next video though, where I explain the cost of substance use disorder in America. It will blow your mind. There have been several studies that have found that large percentage of child abuse and domestic abuse cases are the result of substance use disorder. In turn, there are other studies that have found that individuals who were victims of abuse were more likely to develop a substance use disorder themselves. To help clarify this point, as many as 2/3 of all people in treatment for substance use disorder report that they were physically, sexually, or emotionally abused as a child. It is important to note, however, that not all abuse cases, either physiological or physical, are the result of a substance use disorder. Only a percentage of it is. The following graphs and numbers represent all physical and physiological abuse, not just those resulting in a substance use disorder. So just keep in mind that this is not all the result of substance use disorder. On average, nearly 20 people per minute is physically abused by their intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million men and women. 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year, and 90% of those children are eyewitnesses to this violence. Between 30 and 40% of children who witness or experience violent acts will have an increased chance of becoming involved in a violent relationship in adulthood themselves. Substance use disorder accounts for about 47% of domestic assaults, but only 31% of non-domestic assaults. Almost half of female and male victims of rape in the United States were raped by an acquaintance. Of these, 45.4% of female rape victims and 29% of male rape victims were raped by an intimate partner. More than half of the defendants accused of murdering their spouses, as well as nearly half of the victims, had been drinking alcohol at the time of the incident. 48.4% of women and 48.8% of men have experienced at least one physiological aggressive behavior by an intimate partner. 4 in 10 women and 4 in 10 men have experienced at least one form of control by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 17.9% of women have experienced a situation where an intimate partner tried to keep them from seeing family and friends. 18.7% of women have experienced threats or physical harm by an intimate partner. 95% of men who physically abuse their intimate partner have also physiologically abused them. Women who earn 65% or more of their household's income are more likely to be physiologically abused than the women who earn less than 65% of their household's income. As much as 80% of child abuse cases involve alcohol or drug use. 2019 alone, 4.4 million child maltreatment reports were received. Child abuse reports involve 7.9 million children. 91.4% of victims are mistreated by one or both of their parents. Only 3.4 million children receive prevention or post-response services. 142,056 children receive foster care services. 491,710 victims, or 74.9%, are neglected. 115,100 victims, or 17.5%, are physically abused. 60,927 victims, or 9.3%, are sexually abused. 39,824 victims, or 6.1%, are physiologically mistreated. It is estimated that 1,840 children died from abuse and neglect in 2019. 5 children die every day from child abuse. A little over 70% of all child fatalities were younger than the age of 3 years old. 79.7% of child fatalities involved at least one parent. Of children who died, 72.9% suffered from child neglect. Of the children who died, 44.4% suffered physical abuse, either exclusively or in combination with other maltreatment types. 45.4% of children who died from child abuse are under the age of 1 year old. Boys had a higher child fatality rate than girls, with 2.98 out of every 100,000 being boys and 2.2 out of every 100,000 being girls. Almost 61,000 children are sexually abused. It is estimated that between 50 and 60% of maltreatment fatalities are not recorded on death certificates. Child abuse crosses all social, economic, and educational levels, religions, and ethnic and cultural groups. 14% of all men in prison and 36% of women in prison in the United States were abused as children, and that's about twice as frequently as seen in the general population. Children who experience child abuse and neglect are approximately 9 times more likely to become involved in criminal activity themselves. Again, remember, it's important to know that not all of these are a result of substance use disorder, only the percentage. There's 4 big ways that I can think of that family can be separated from substance use disorder, and that's child relocation, divorce, incarceration, and death. With child relocation, drug abuse is the second leading cause of children entering the foster system, only behind neglect, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of those neglect cases was as a result of substance use disorder, but that's only a theory of mine. In 2019, 34% or 86,694% of the children that entered foster care was due to parental drug use. Another 2% or 5,500 was due to children themselves abusing. Additionally, 13,637 was due to alcohol abuse by the parents, and another 991 cases were due to the children themselves abusing alcohol. Sadly, about 50% of marriages end in divorce, and about 7.3% of those are due to substance abuse. Close to 6 million kids in America have experienced losing a parent to prison or jail at some point in their life, and drug offenses are the leading cause of arrest in the United States. In 2020 alone, there was roughly 2.12 million people incarcerated in the United States in local jails and state and federal prisons, but that not all of them was due to drug offenses. Now, truthfully, I could end the incarceration part right here and move on, but I'm not. Because there is a fundamental flaw in how the United States handles those that have substance use disorder. The focus is more on punishment rather than treating their underlying problem. As you know from the first video, substance use disorder is a mental illness, and it often coexists with other mental illnesses. So therefore, it is a medical problem, not a legal problem. And therefore many who have been arrested for substance use disorder don't get the treatment that they need, and they account for over 50% of those that have been arrested multiple times. So how bad is it? Well, listen to this. In 2019 alone, there was 1,558,862 arrests for drug violations, with 1,351,533 or 86.7% of those being for possession, and the remaining 207,328 being for sales. And of those arrests, 545,600 were for marijuana. For marijuana arrests, 394,000 was for possession, and 45,206 were for sales. Heroin and cocaine resulted in 371,008 arrests. 305,536 of those were for possession, and 65,472 for sales. Synthetic drugs such as fentanyl and oxycodone accounted for 88,854 drug arrests in 2019, 62,354 for possession, and 26,500 for sales. And finally, other non-narcotics such as methamphetamines and ecstasy had the highest arrest rate, with 551,836. 483,247 of those was for possession, and 68,589 was for sales. My question is, why can't we do something like Portugal, who does the complete opposite of what we do and focuses more on treatment rather than incarceration? In 2001, they stopped incarcerating people who were caught using or possessing illegal drugs in small amounts. Instead, they had the substance confiscated and were sent to a panel made up of legal, health, and social worker professions. And these panels will refer people to drug treatment programs and hand out fines or impose community service. The dealers were still arrested, however. Since that law was implemented in 2001, drug-related deaths have remained below the EU average, and the proportion of prisoners sentenced for drugs have fallen from 40% to 15%, and the rates for drug use have remained consistently below the EU average. Think of it like this: fear of prison is likely one of the reasons those suffering from substance use disorder won't seek help and will hide their problem. What the United States needs to realize is that substance use disorders are medical in nature, not an issue of law and order. And for the record, I'm speaking only about the use of substances. I'm not talking about the crimes that they might commit while they're under the influence, and most certainly not talking about the dealers. What's sad is that incarceration costs the taxpayers more than treatment would, which means that we actually have nothing to lose by providing those that have a substance use disorder with health services that would actually address their problems. Now, if America were to focus more on treatment rather than punishment, there would be a greater likelihood of not only finding the root of their problem and fixing it, but also possibly getting families back together faster, especially considering that first offenders of simple possession can get 2 to 10 years in prison, opposed to the 20 to 90 days of rehab, if a little more for that. If America actually focused more on the treatment rather than punishment, over 1 million people could have been helped in 2019. That's over 1 million people that could have been helped with something that they have no control over. One bad choice potentially caused over 1 million people to lose their family. But instead of helping them, we punish them. And let's not forget about the other estimated 25 million that suffer from substance use disorder, that they don't realize that they have a problem, can't admit that they have a problem, or can't get treatment for their problems, or are too scared to come forward with their problem because they are too scared of going to prison or being shamed. That's a lot of people. That's why we need to change this. Before we get into our last topic though, if you have gotten any value out of this video, please give it a like so it can reach more people, because this and the first video and the 2 forthcoming videos are all important for people to see so they can better understand the impact of substance use disorder and the actual meaning of substance use disorder. Death is the thing that we all fear the most about happening to our loved ones, but it's the one thing that we all know will eventually happen in the end. And no matter how much we try to convince ourselves otherwise, we would never be prepared for it. Death itself can shatter a family, and with an estimated 2.5 to 3 million deaths per year in the United States, many families will suffer. Overdoses is the #1 cause of accidental deaths in the United States. In 2019 alone, there was more than 70,000 people who died from drug-involved overdoses, including illegal drugs and prescription opioids. It probably won't shock anybody to know that in 2020 it was worse with COVID-19. In some communities, overdose-related emergency calls were up as much as 40%, and 42 states reported increased overdose deaths during the pandemic. But not all substance use disorder-related deaths are the result of an overdose. The 70,000 deaths pales in comparison to the number of both tobacco and alcohol-related deaths per each year. And yes, both are addictive substances, and both do have a reason to be mentioned here. Tobacco is actually responsible for more than 480,000 deaths per year in the United States, including more than 41,000 deaths resulting from secondhand smoke exposure. That's about 1,300 deaths per day. And that number might sound huge until you take into consideration that cancer is the second leading cause of death in the United States, only behind heart disease, and lung cancer is the cause of the most cancer deaths by far. With 80 to 90% of those deaths being linked to cigarette smoking, it starts to make a whole lot more sense. Alcohol is responsible for more than 95,000 deaths in the United States each year. That's about 261 deaths per day. In 2016, with all the deaths attributed to alcohol consumption worldwide, 28.7% were due to injuries, 21.3% were due to digestive diseases, primarily cirrhosis of the liver and pancreatitis. 19% were due to cardiovascular diseases, 12.9% were due to infectious diseases including tuberculosis, pneumonia, and HIV/AIDS. 12.6% were due to cancers. In 2016 alone, there was a total of 10,497 deaths in the United States from alcohol-related car accidents. Then in 2017, that number went up to 10,874. Hundreds of the victims in these car accidents were actually below the age of 14. 700,000 deaths per year due to substance use disorder, and that's a lot of families losing loved ones, and that is only the documented deaths. And Nikki Sixx wasn't wrong in the quote I put at the beginning of this video. Addiction doesn't just affect those addicted, it also destroys the family and friends. It absolutely does or can, but I do believe that a better quote is, substance use disorder doesn't just affect the user, it can destroy their family, friends, and other families, yet they were punished, not treated. In conclusion, it's heartbreaking how many families are torn apart by substance use disorder. As stated in the first video of this series, no one ever plans to become addicted, yet nearly everyone that starts usually starts to ease pain or forget trauma or simply to fit in with their friends. That one mistake can easily lead them down that path of destruction that can ultimately cost them their freedom, their family, or even their life. And America needs to lose the stigma associated with substance use disorders and actually help those suffering and not punish them. And I'm going to ask you again to please come back for the next video. And I'm going to be putting a lot of the myths and facts about substance use disorder head to head and shattering a lot of misconceptions.